So what you're seeing here, it's very similar to Simple Tooltip. It's using the absolute position behavior, that element, and then just adding minimal styling. But the thing is, it can contain more than just a one-liner. And if Rich Text Editor was updated to lit element, I'd be able to show you. I'm basically reverse engineering a WYSIWYG editor. And so one of the things that the WYSIWYG editor has is when you insert a link, there's a popover that actually has form fields in it, right? It needed more than just a one-liner. And basically, since this is just a dumb container, you could throw an entire card inside that popover. I mean, you don't
like a
want to
whole
make
nother web component or whatever.
Yes, so you could throw accent card or Monopoly card in there, you know, because somebody really loves us and wants to share the Monopoly card with us. But you could throw anything in there, and the proof is that I could throw a form inside of it. I was actually using simple fields, and you know, that way I could get like the link URL and all of that, but within a pop-up. So so it's simple-popover, and nice. You just set the 4 to the ID of the element. It'll even make sure, I believe it now will check if it's not within the same shadow root as the thing with the ID, it will actually go up through the ancestors and search, because I know that's one of the problems with IDs in Shadow DOM. You set it to auto if you want it to just automatically show up. Otherwise, you can kind of toggle the you know, turn the thing back off and on again by setting the 4 as the ID. And then you have positions like top, bottom, left, or right. And it will, you know, follow you on your page to where those things exist. But yeah, you can pretty much throw anything in it.
And those would be able to, like, I'm guessing, but I want to make sure, the location of that simple popover tag that's where it's down at the bottom, that could actually exist within the text, correct?
Yeah, you could pop it into the bottom of the document, and it should be searching the entire document. If it doesn't, now that I have anchor behaviors doing that, I can go back through. I think I do have it so that as long as the ID is unique, it'll find it.
Yeah, because what I'm looking to do probably is like right around where it has like NataQ, and you have that in strong. Right after that would be probably the information that would be into that popover. So.
Yeah, and when it's not hooked up with an ID and appearing, it's not it's completely hidden. So if you're worried about that element of it.
No, that's great.
Yeah, so if you have any issues or questions about it, let me know. Because as soon as I move back to Rich Text Editor, which is my answer to the text editor, I'll be looking at it again anyway.
Cool deal. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep, no problem.
You were going to show something else today too, Nikki?
Yeah, so, and I can't believe we're not bored with this yet. I've been doing more stuff in Storybook. One of the things that Storybook now does is I now have it being able to add CSS. When I configure it. And so I've got CSS slots, I've got properties, I've got empty slots here that take the HTML. Nav card is now in there. So this is just a nav link. It's the one where if you, you know, if you are hovering anywhere on the card, it's going to deal with that link so you can keep it short. So that one's up there, and it's got CSS properties. And then I worked on gallery and added a masonry layout. It still needs a little bit of work yet, but as I was doing gallery and gallery grid, I was having too much fun trying to troubleshoot it with Storybook, and just decided to take it one step further. And so now gallery has this layout ability to switch between those three. And what I try to do is the gallery and the timeline and the Alley Media Player will actually take objects and arrays for some of their data. But if you wanted to do it use progressive enhancement, they'll all detect slots. So in anything that has a progressive enhancement option, when I was putting together our storybook, I created a with slots example, which just shows you what the semantic HTML would look like if you wanted to do it that way. A biggie that I'm still working some of the kinks out to is that I now have Alley Media up and available to look at in Storybook. And so Alley Media has an audio player that uses, data or a slot. See, in the slot, you can just put audio in there, and it's got an interactive transcript. It's got the YouTube piece, and the YouTube piece will take both the slotted iframe or data, and then we've got the regular video player. Like I said, there are still some kinks. A lot of them are around some of the ways that we import external libraries, and so I've got to figure that out. But I was able to get this going and to get the VTT files up and running thanks to Polymer Slack, the OpenWC channel, because Rollup wasn't grabbing me the files that I needed. And now I was able to get some of our demo files. And because of CORS issues, you have to have the VTE where the page is that is loading them. But yeah, so I've been putting all of these pieces up. I wanted to show how I did that, and I talked about it a little bit last time. This is a scaffolded model I've been working on. And so one of the easiest examples was the idea that you could say, make an element from a class and put in the element name. It would look for the static get tag and know what tag to write. And then this would be any of the things that you want to set defaults for. Otherwise, it's going to first look to see if there are HAX properties on it. If it's HAX capable and has HAX properties, it's just going to use those for setting up the knobs. If not, it's just going to build it off of the regular lit data types. And so that's the easiest way to make one of these happen. And this is Studio, really simple. I mean, you basically just have these connections to my data files that you could tweak. Now, it doesn't recognize that you could upload a file there, because again, it's just recognizing that there's a string. So it's just doing a text field because there's no HAX properties on this. Making it a little more complex, I also added, this is where after this setting of defaults in the make element from class, you can do this little bit here where you're adding an array of additional properties. So that one was which one? It's accent card. So if we go back up to accent card. So this is the properties, the slots, and the CSS tag. What I'm doing here is just defining this as CSS so that it ends up in a separate CSS tab. And I can even set the regular variables here as well. And that's all using my Storybook utilities here. And that's how I'm doing that. So the easiest thing is making it from the class, giving it defaults, but then we can also define what kind of tabs might be in it. I think gallery gets a little more complex, or not. I guess gallery does not get more, yeah.
So you want to draw those from the demos you'd mentioned before we started recording?
Yes. So one of the things is for the very simplest ones, what I should just do is pull the demo data, the defaults from your demos. The thing that I'm running into is I would like to go a step beyond your demos, in that I noticed that what you have is you have all the properties for the defaults, mapped as JSON. But for the slot, you just have it listed as content instead of, instead of separating out each of the slots if something had multiple slots.
Well, you could write multiple slots in there. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just
So right now I just didn't know if you had like a set format, because if we have like a decided upon format and we're mapping the slots in there, and even some of the CSS, it would be very easy for me to then, pull some of that into how Storybook Utils deals with it. And so some of these things that aren't very complex could just, I could just spell it all out in the demo.
So like Video Player has one.
You pull up the Video Player.
Yeah, if you pull up Video Player's HAX wiring. First one. And then scroll all the way down.
I believe that's the one I was looking at.
So, yes. What that is, demo schema is now available. I have to add it to the documentation, although we're going to burn down our docs anyway, so that's why I haven't. But now on HAX schema, you can define demo schema, which is an array of objects. And these objects are mimicking a internal little data structure that's passed around in HAX called HAX element schema. So this is like the simplest way that you can take an element in the DOM and convert it to a little JSON blob and then still get the exact same thing back on the other side. So I pass things around internal to HAX in this format all the time. It's a really easy way to do like data sanitization stuff. Like I take the element, rip it to this format, and then spit it back into the page. And just the process of doing that, it's really easy to siphon off any XSS or anything. So the content piece of that is literally just putting anything in there. So, I mean, if you had stuff that had slots or whatever, and you put, div slot equals name or whatever, but it wasn't intended to map like to specific slots or anything like that.
Could we extend it so that it does? And maybe content, if it's just a string, is just the unnamed slot. But if it's an object, we break it down.
What advantage does that have?
Mapping it to knobs.
Why would you need to, I'm missing something as far as
because
why the knobs need mapped that way.
So that each separate slot is in its own separate place. Because the whole purpose of a knob is to be able to adjust one piece that's one single discrete piece. I mean, it doesn't have to be, but it would be useful for being able to demo, to be able to say, here are the slots. Plus, if you think about it, like up here, when we define the things, there's usually, this one might not be a good example. When we're defining them up here, we're defining them as separate slots and not as one big div. So
you also can do just the generic slot with no name as well, but I mean, or content is anything that is in an unnamed slot, but then we have, with the name slots, could we drop them in here? Would that still map correctly? I mean, I wouldn't want to put them in properties because
you have style here. And I would probably break style. Like, it would be, ideally, I would like it to kind of mirror and say, here are properties, here are style, like here's CSS, and here's slots as three different objects. Because I'm demanding and I need lots of things.
I mean, you could do that. Have fun refactoring that internal to HAX. It's all like, it's just going, there's so many places where it goes hey, you gave me a tag and properties, and I'll hydrate the properties into their associated, string values and content. It's not that it can't be done. I'm not opposed to it. It's just style, unfortunately, is bizarre in the DOM because style is an attribute, but yet the individual pieces of it, like in JavaScript, you would access it as whatever dot style dot width and get 100%. But yet if you ask what the style is, it'll just give you a string. If you ask what the style is as a class, like a classed object, it gives you literally every potential style, whether or not it's the default of the browser or set by the user. So, I mean, you can break it out that way. It just gets a little weird.
Yeah. I just meant for styles that you specifically, like CSS variables and whatnot.
Yeah, and fortunately, thus far, we don't set a lot of styles.
That, and I kind of want to be able to have on the advanced section of HAX the ability to mess with certain HAX exposed CSS variables for power users. Because I want all the things. No,
I know. Yeah, we should probably focus on that instead of the interface being more usable. You're right. I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I just
before I get any further with our million elements to put in Storybook, I think like at least having an idea of, well, why not put some of this shit in demo schema, and anything special I can define in that scaffolded way.
Yeah, I mean, you can also preg split a style property and get an object off of it.
Yeah.
Same with content, but I'm not like horribly like dying on this hill. It's just involves refactoring internal to like HAX is using this so that when you drag and drop it converts this into an element. So
yeah, I mean I can live with it the way it is. I just I didn't know how open it was to some adjustments for future use.
The content one I think would be easy to manipulate. The style one might be a little more complicated, just thinking off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Just because of the way that this ends up getting leveraged. But I mean, if it refactors it to make it easier, someone is manually writing this anyway, and the machine is just generating.
Yeah, and it's like, why write it twice? If I can write it once in the demo schema and then it gets pulled over from, if Storybook Utilities knows to look there, then I wouldn't need to do it twice.
Yeah, I would just wonder how much of a refactor that is as to whether you're saving time.
How many elements do we have?
I mean, you're going to make more specific demos most likely anyway. I've seen what you've already made.
There are a lot of, yeah. And then I refactor them so that they don't have to be as specific. But no, that's why I am writing a utilities function so that it eventually does all that work and I have less and less code. Isn't that like the name of the game? But yeah, that was my one big question. The other one we could save for a discussion later about grid plate wiring.
We could do that, or you can open up HAX, or I can open up HAX.
Why don't you open
I'm not morally opposed to the change you were saying. I wonder at times your like OCD to refactor, whether it actually comes back around and we use those, or if like the people that go to Storybook are going to be mostly a developer audience. And so then we're going to end up writing.
No, the Storybook Utilities is for me, so that as I document this shit, I don't have to like write all the demos. That's the whole reason I'm doing this.
Makes sense. Let me go to at least.
But I'd like to know that when I'm writing the demos, I'm also writing these HAX demos, because I think the HAX demo, while Storybook is interesting for developers, I think what people are really going to want from the CDN is the demos.